Today I'd like to turn your attention to the 6th chapter of Daniel. It's one of the most famous stories in the entire Bible. It is a story of how Daniel was thrown into the lion's den and how God spared his life. In this chapter we will learn some amazing truths about the devotion and the prayer life of Daniel. Daniel was one of the top administrators in the kingdom of Darius the Mede. He was actually one of the top 3 administrators in the entire kingdom and was greatly loved by Darius. In fact, Daniel was so skilled in leadership that the king had plans to make him the top ruler of his entire kingdom. Daniel had served in the government for over 60 years. He was between 80 and 90 years old. We have seen much political turmoil in our nation these past few years, and things were not any different in Daniel's day. The other top officials were jealous of Daniel and his popularity with the king and wanted to take him down as fast as they could. However, Daniel was such a righteous man that they could not find anything to accuse him of. Notice that Daniel did not play their games. He just continued to live a godly life and to walk in integrity. The other administrators decided that the only way they could get to Daniel was through his devotion to the Lord God, his God. They knew that King Darius had a strong ego, as do most political leaders. They appealed to his pride and offered him a law that they knew would topple Daniel. This new law declared that no one could pray to any other god besides Darius for 30 days. The penalty for breaking this law was to be thrown into the lion's den. Darius signed the law, not thinking that this law would cause Daniel to be killed. The interesting point of this story is that after Daniel knew of this law, he continued his practice of praying to the Lord morning, noon, and night. This was his discipline of seeking the Lord throughout each day. I want to read this for you. When Daniel learned that the law had been signed, he went home and knelt down as usual, notice that, as usual, in his upstairs room with its windows open toward Jerusalem. He prayed 3 times a day, just as he had always done, giving thanks to his God. The officials went together to Daniel's house and found him praying and asking for God's help. Most of you know the rest of the story. Administrators saw Daniel praying in his home and reported this to the king. Once a law was made by the king of the Medes and the Persians, it had to be enforced. Consequently, Daniel was thrown into the lion's den to be killed. There is a theme that runs throughout the Old Testament, that God fights for his godly remnant. He protects them. As long as the Hebrew people were obedient to God, he defeated their enemies. And it did not matter if they were outnumbered. There's many examples of that. He took care of them. The Lord fought for Daniel and did not allow him to be killed by the lions. He was rewarded by prospering during the reign of Darius. He also was able to see the Lord God praised by a pagan king. Daniel reminds us of Peter and John when they were told by the Jewish leaders that they could no longer talk publicly about Jesus or face punishment. Peter and John replied they could not disobey Jesus. He had told them to preach the gospel of Christ throughout the entire world. No matter what happens to us in the coming days, we as God's people must remain faithful to our God and represent him to our world. If we will pray and depend upon our God, and if we will obey Jesus, he will use us for his glory and take care of us. This does not mean that we will not face persecution. It means that he will be with us and give us a strong sense of his presence, his joy, his peace, and his love. Daniel had learned the joy of prayer and dependence upon God. We can learn this also. We all have to begin and stay with it. Prayer is a discipline and a joy. We all start out as rookies, and we can progress as far as we want to go. We will look at one final prayer from Daniel in a couple of weeks, from Daniel 9. This is one of the greatest prayers in all of the Bible, and one of desperation. Please continue with us in our 21 days of prayer, and let us continue all year long. If we do, God will do amazing things in and through us. Thank you.